Guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. And today's topic is all about decluttering and using it as a personal productivity tool. With that, I have a fantastic guest that I've found, Michelle Passoff, and she's got a variety of backgrounds and entrepreneurial pursuits that she's going to discuss and how it led her to doing what she's doing, this concept of decluttering, moving energy, which is really interesting, and using it as a abundance tool and productivity tool. So, Michelle, welcome.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, I know you have a beautiful background. So talk about, I know you told me just briefly your pursuits and how it led to do what you're doing today.
I started out as a public relations consultant in New York City. I worked on behalf of large international corporations on their consumer product media programs. And I would create and manufacture news that we could promote their products. So I actually started out in the world of inspiring people to buy things.
Oh,
And over the course of about 15 years of sitting on Madison Avenue in my glamour office overlooking Central Park, I was also doing personal growth work. What does it mean to be a woman? What does it mean to be a business person? What does it mean to be human? And over the course of 15 years of self-exploration, I said, I should come to a conclusion. And, how many years can you do this without summing it up? And my summing it up is get rid of what you don't need and want and use and love, and what doesn't nurture and support you, so that you make space to know who you are, see what you want, and have a clear path to achieve it. So I used all of my high-level marketing skills when I had that epiphany to hang signs on bus stops up and down Broadway in Manhattan, promoting lighten up, free yourself from clutter, create the space for miracles while you free yourself from too much stuff. And doctors and lawyers and financiers and school teachers and old people and young people, they started calling me wanting to get rid of their clutter. And in New York City, I call it the clutter capital of the world, because you have small spaces and a lot of stuff, a lot of interests.
yeah.
And people don't have clutter just because they're a mess. In the case of most of my clients in New York, it was because they lived in small spaces with a lot of interests. So I started consulting and working with people and leading classes, and one thing leading to another. I said, I can't get around to everybody, so I'll write a book. So I got a book on how to write a book. And my book was published many years ago, actually. And I've gone around the world and back teaching people how to free themselves as a path of enlightenment, as a path of productivity, as a little known and underused management tool. So I enjoyed that for many, many years.
That's quite interesting. And we're going to dive into it. And I like to point out to the audience that Michelle's book, Lighten Up, Free Yourself from Clutter, which you can find on Amazon, published in 1998. So this is even before this whole decluttering revolution, this everybody's. And what's interesting is, talk about this impact of clutter and on productivity, and also like as a symptom of, because I watched the show Hoarders a lot, and that was quite interesting. It's kind of like a OCD type of neuroses where
Yeah,
people just like, and then you like there's like houses, from floor to ceiling
yeah.
up, and you can't walk. Like, talk about that.
Well, a hoarder is a different animal than somebody who wants to declutter. A hoarder usually has a psychological element to why it is they're doing what they're doing. And most of the clients that I've worked with over the years, I'm not dealing with psychology. I'm dealing with the future. What do
Oh,
you, my first question I ask to everybody is, what are you making room for?
oh,
And once we say, well, what are you making room for? And we get that answer, then we can go to work on almost anything, keeping in mind what's gonna come into the empty space we create. And then you want to recognize that as related to the clutter.
yeah.
For example, I had a client who was a teacher and she wanted to find a husband. And we started cleaning clutter in her closet. And in the process of that, she got an offer to do a sabbatical in Australia. Now, what does clutter cleaning your closet have to do with teaching in Australia? Well, I invite people to, first of all, suspend your disbelief that you're going to open up space for just the right thing at just the right moment to come into it, and watch and see what happens and attribute what happens to your clutter cleaning. So what happened with her, she went to Australia, and lo and behold, she met her husband there. Now, do I have research that shows that connection? I don't, but I have anecdotal experience over many years of doing this with all kinds of people, that when you have the world in which you live, the physical environment in which you live correlated to who you are and what you want, that things are going to happen more serendipitously and easier with less stress than if you have a lot of stuff in the way. Right now, what I'm doing, I've circled back after doing many things, including traveling around the world, speaking about this. I've circled back, and I'm writing a book now called Decluttering 55 Plus. And I'm launching Decluttering 55 Plus with Michelle Passoff podcast on June 7th, and that's 2024 in case this airs much later or whatever. So that I can discuss the particular points of view that I have about the challenges of clutter once you're in the later and mature years of your life.
And another follow-up question is, because I love this idea how you're talking about removing things to create more space, and people are kind of warming up to that idea, the audience. One thing that's really interesting is because I've started to play around with this, is like I'll take stuff that, like, if it's stuff that's just sitting around, like old books and stuff, and if, like, if I don't read it after like a week or two, I know it's not gonna get read, so I donate it to like the library. Or but then a lot of times it's like, oh man, I spent $10 on that book. Oh man, this and that, and I let that go, and I gave away $1,000 worth of stuff when I could have sold it on eBay, and it weighs you down more. So talk about this, when you let things go and you regret it and it weighs you down more. How do you handle that?
It's a big myth that when you let things go that you don't know, want, and use and love, that you're gonna next day, have the regret that you lost it. That rarely happens. It may, but it rarely happens. But more often than not, it's replaceable.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't use that as a quote unquote excuse for keeping your stuff. You know what? Sell it. Sell it on eBay. Sell it on Facebook Manager. Have an estate sale. Have a yard sale. Market it and sell it. I know during the pandemic, my husband and I were in the middle of a renovation, and we decided to take the opportunity to sell everything we own, which was all beautiful stuff, except that we had moved 3 times and made things fit into the spaces in which we were newly occupied. And in the process of that, my decor was not cohesive. So I wanted to hit the reset and refresh button on my decor, and one item at a time, even though I owned an estate sale company for 14 years and I know how to sell stuff. I sold one item at a time during the pandemic, right at my front door, and I got very good money for it. So don't be lazy. Don't be lazy about getting started. Don't be lazy about doing whatever you need to do to move that stuff along. And anytime you can, save the dump from, garbage and recycle, and get it into the hands of somebody who really wants and loves it, but it's no longer good for you, then do that.
Like I said, it's kind of it's almost like this ritual, this process of just like cleansing and just letting go, and just creating more to allow the things to come in that are what you call serendipitous and fortuitous. Next question I have is, we were talking backstage, about feng shui, and I know you're not an expert, but you talk about this idea of moving energy, and which is really interesting, is like because like I've been playing around, and is this idea of like being able to move energy. Talk about creating space and how that affects like how clutter and decluttering allows moving energy.
Well, I believe all stuff has energy, and if I recommend that people just sit in the middle of a cluttered room, close their eyes, cross their legs, and go and feel the energy, and
Yeah.
then clean and go back to that spot where you were sitting and feel the energy again. I can almost tell when I'm working with somebody to clean clutter when the shift happens.
Uh-huh.
You can move one item and you could feel it. It happens.
Yeah.
You get to the point where you can actually begin to have a sensitivity toward that stuff. I'd like to address, though, the unique clutter that 55 and plus people have.
Uh-huh.
They may still be working, they may be on the verge of retirement, or they may be already retired, and they complain still of clutter. Stuff is still in their garage, or their kids have moved out and now they've got all their kids' stuff still in their old bedrooms, or they've accumulated stuff over many years of living in a place, and they have this what I call conventional clutter. Clutter like papers and clothes and too much stuff. And what I tell people on the verge of 55 and up is, guess what? That's the easy stuff. What's really ahead of you is the hard kind of clutter to address. And that's the things we're sweeping under the carpet, putting it off another day, or never. Maybe we're never going to, we say, oh, they'll take care of it when I'm gone. So instead of doing that, I urge people to take it out from under the carpet, put it on the table into the light of day, and look at it. But it's not stuff.
Yeah.
It's what makes room for what really matters. And it's things like your health and fitness,
Mm.
digital decluttering. Where are you going to move next? Where are you going to live next? Are your financial papers and legal matters in order? And even what are your funeral arrangements? All that may sound like you're getting ready to roll over and die, but I'm telling you, it's not. It's to invigorate your life so you leave a legacy, not a mess.
Mm.
So I'm writing a book about that, and my podcast, which airs on June 7th on all platforms, on podcast platforms and on YouTube, will talk with all kinds of experts and geeks and authors on all those different topics, so that we don't go into the second half or third half part of our lives thinking, oh, I'm going to kick up my heels and do nothing. Those are not the do nothing years. Those are the years where you're going to live longer and go more places and do more things. And you want to have the space to do that without stress or concern or regret.
Uh,
So I urge people to go to my website, decluttering55plus.com, and sign up so they can get notifications about news they can use from time to time, and be a part of, fold themselves into the community, even if they're children of people 55 and plus.
yeah.
They can go to decluttering55plus.com and help grow that community, because it's conversations that heretofore, it breaks new ground once again, as I did with my first book, Breaking New Ground, talking about clutter not as neat and tidy, but as a tool for productivity. This breaks new ground for seniors and clutter. So I hope to meet everybody that's in your community and have them visit us as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I have a strategy for, for the accumulation things, either giving it away or like putting it into, kind of putting those things to use, like actually like making utility as opposed to just sitting there and just like, and I love this idea because one of my coaches, he was like, write your obituary, and and it's like, again, it's very morbid, but it's
Yeah.
people think it's weird, but it's actually very powerful because then you can basically work back, and then basically the steps that you're taking to live a life that you want to live, and especially with specific instructions that you mentioned. So um
Yeah.
so,
Do you want to leave a legacy or a mess? Where do you want to make a difference? Where do you want to have an impact? And to live your life consistent with that, and to have, the environment not battle against you
yeah,
in order to achieve that, but to kind of be the wind under your sails to do it with grace and dignity and speed,
yeah,
really.
yeah, I love that. And then you mentioned your website, and how can people contact you, work with you, help people declutter their lives and and move the energy to and shift the energy more to more positive, more productive, as opposed to weighing you down and heaviness, all of that.
Well, if they go to www.decluttering55plus.com, sign up on the Let's Connect forum and let me know what they need, I can respond to that. I'm a speaker, so if they have an organization or a company and they need a speaker, I'm happy to chat up all the great things you might not know about letting go. I also do what are called roundtables. I don't give classes on decluttering 55 plus. I conduct roundtables, and that way people get involved in the conversation. I'm not like imparting, do this, do that, do that. I'm inviting people to identify what they need to do and want to do and what makes a difference for them to do, identify it. Instead of being befuddled and confronted and confused, to get clear on what you want and need to do in regard to that, whether it's learn how to put your calendar out of a paper system to a digital system, or to make more space on your computer, not to be feared of technology, or to 67% of people don't write their wills. So instead of being afraid of dying, be responsible for yourself and for your loved ones and for the places you want to make a difference, and get that paperwork done. And then it's not ever done until you die, because 5 years from now, you might need to revisit that and change things. So that's never done. And, making decisions, there's so many options of where you can live as you age. And, I discuss those options, and you want to know what those options are, and you want to make clear choices, because it gets to the point where what could be free choice becomes a crisis if you don't make those decisions. So it's all about raising consciousness. Let's put it that way.
Mm.
And just be in touch with me. And the way we're going to raise consciousness at Decluttering 55 Plus is going to evolve and change. If you have ideas of people I should have speak to, or if you're somebody I should speak to on the podcast, let me know, and we'll talk about it, figure it out, and give you a voice so that you can help people too. So
Yeah.
many, many different things we could do together. So be in touch. That's the first step.
One follow-up question, because I know we have 7 minutes, and which is this idea of 55 plus, you've accumulated a lot of baggage and emotional trauma, and you
Yeah.
hold it in your body. And how does that relate to having a lot of clutter, and how do you release all that trauma from your body?
It may have a relationship to physical clutter, all of your internal clutter. I don't personally coach people in that. I coach them on their future and creating what's their future and having an environment that's consistent with it. However, I do acknowledge that if you have that inner turmoil, that there are very useful courses to take that can help you sort that stuff out. I'm not the resource for that. But I've done Landmark Forum, and I highly recommend it. If you go to landmarkworldwide.com, it's a course which really has you put your past in the past and the future as a blank slate. And there's so many distinctions that are powerful. I like a course called Avatar, which is not the blue people. It's avatarepc.com. And those are tools you can use to do a self-exploration that will free that inner clutter. I don't do that kind of coaching, but there are very powerful courses that I highly recommend that do that. And take it on, take it on, because who needs it? It's, you want some stuff, you want to be clear minded, headed, so that you're available for what's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I've heard of Landmark. It's very similar to like Tony Robbins, and yeah, I've heard this Dickens approach, where it's basically you put yourself in this shoes, where it's like if you were to continue on the same path, it's kind of like a negative reinforcement conditioning. It's like teaching you to not do what you're currently doing, and it's kind of like a negative as opposed to a positive. which is interesting. Like I said, this spiritual.
Landmark education is not, it's a conversation which draws distinctions, and it starts moving into a world that you don't even know that you don't even know, that you're operating out of beliefs that you have that you may have acquired when you were 2 or 3 or 5 or 7 years old, and you're still operating out of them when you're 35 and 45 and 50 years old. So it's kind of a reset so that you're not automatic. You're not on automatic. You're living deliberately, which is really what clutter cleaning in the physical environment is all about. And what decluttering 55 plus is all about is live deliberately, not, not having to shove stuff out of the way or step over stuff in order to get things done, but to be free.
Interesting. And so thanks so much for coming on, and all of the resources will be in the show notes, and thanks again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate meeting you.